Got a question from Paris, France. Dear Dr. Craig, each time I've tried to explain the Kalam cosmological argument, I have been answered by my audience that the second premise, universe has a beginning, is not well established, because we are in complete ignorance about what could have happened before the Planck time, 10 to the negative 43 seconds, when neither time nor space have the same signification as afterwards. So this premise, they say, is a very naive extrapolation from the general theory of relativity. So my question is, are the unknown events that occurred before Planck time able to make a difference? How can we explain that the absence of a quantum gravity theory is not a problem and that the general theory of relativity is enough to do the Kalam cosmological argument's job?
All right. The first point to understand is that the primary argument that I give for the finitude of the past are philosophical arguments based on the impossibility of the existence of an actually infinite number of things, and then secondly on the impossibility of forming an actual infinite by successive addition. So I see the scientific evidence as merely confirmatory of a conclusion that has already been reached on the basis of philosophical arguments. Now, with respect to the scientific confirmation, what our reader needs to appreciate is that the Borde-Guth-Vilenkin theorem, which was crafted in 2003 and is described in my book Reasonable Faith, is independent of any physical description of the universe prior to the Planck time. That is to say, it doesn't matter what kind of physical description you give of that early era, the Borde-Guth-Vilenkin theorem still holds. And that is one of the remarkable features of this theorem. It doesn't even assume that gravity is described by Einstein's equations, and yet it shows that any universe that is on average expanding throughout its history cannot be infinite in the past but must have a beginning. And similarly, the second scientific confirmation based on the thermodynamic properties of the universe doesn't depend upon a physical description of that era either, because it's not appealing to relativistic physics. Thermodynamics is a different discipline that isn't dependent upon a quantum theory of gravity. So I think in both cases we have good grounds for thinking that the universe is not past infinite.
Planck time, named after Max Planck, and he described this as 10 to the negative 43 seconds.
Well, he didn't describe that, but that's what the Planck time is identified as, is this very, very brief microsecond within where the singularity occurs in the standard model.
So the claim is that since we don't know what happened prior to that brief moment of Planck time, therefore we are in ignorance concerning the cause of the universe, or that had a cause?
Well, not the cause of the universe. The claim is that in the absence of a physics to describe the Planck era, that we cannot have any grounds for thinking that the universe began to exist. And that simply doesn't follow. You can have good grounds for believing that the universe began to exist even if you don't have a physical description of the Planck era. And, in fact, the Borde-Guth-Vilenkin theorem gives us precisely such ground.